So it seems like this double P style bass is starting to make a comeback. I'm starting to see it every so often from some of these small builders and people that make custom stuff because it's a really, really cool option for pickup layout. Now, as you guys know, if you've watched me, you know that P bass is my favorite style of bass, and it's because of the pickup. Like, that's the reason. I don't know anybody that has a complaint with the sound of a P bass. If you do know somebody that's interesting, please leave me a comment and let me know. The one thing that I've kind of mentioned before, but I'll go into it here, is that if you don't like the tone of a P bass, it's probably the particular type of pickup. Meaning, if you've got like a vintage style one that's not very full range, you might not like it because it's sort of narrow mid focused, and you could benefit from getting a ceramic pickup or something like a Duncan quarter pound that is a little bit more open on the top end. There's all kinds of options like that. I bring that up to say that what's better than a P bass? Double P bass. This is unfortunately a very rare pickup combination because this is, in my opinion, one of the best pickup combinations for bass. It really is, and it fixes a lot of the problems I had with a PJ. Now, if you have a PJ set up, sometimes it sounds incredible. Sometimes it sounds a little weird in the mid range. Some people make use of the weird mid range and benefit that to the style of music. But I just want to take, for example, so you may wonder, why does Duff McKagan pair these two pickups together? Well, that would be because, okay, Duncan, your site has gone downhill a little bit. All right, the bridge is a hot stack, meaning that this is two coils stacked on top of each other and is packed with as much wire as possible to balance with the neck pickup. See, PJ has always sounded a little bit unbalanced because a jazz bass pickup, being this narrow, just doesn't really pack the same punch as a P bass split coil. So it just doesn't balance exactly correct. Now, if you have a bass with two P pickups like this, it does balance. Let me see if I can pull this up. Here we have the FGN Mighty Power. Unfortunately, these are very difficult to find in the States. I particularly like this one because although you sacrifice having a pickup in the original P bass spot, you get one in sort of the Music Man spot, which I think is a brilliant idea. Also, you notice that the RKM I showed you at the beginning of this video and this FGN both have reverse piece setups. I think there's definitely something to be noted from that. I think a lot of people have realized that this is sort of probably the better way to do it. I do not think it's a deal breaker having it reverse or regular. So you've got RKM if you want to spend over $3,000. You've got FGN if you want to spend $1,500, right? You have Yannick Guizdala's. This is another RKM. He has sort of made this popular. This is a 5-string with 2P pickups. And the really cool thing about Yannick's, so these are Nordstrands, and it doesn't say the exact models, but I believe this is NP5A and NP5. The angled pole piece one generally is wound hotter because what happens is the surface area, if you have a straight line of poles and you wind around it, it's just, it's a narrow wind. Whereas with angled poles, your wind of wire gets wider and therefore hotter. So a cool thing of what he's got going on here is that this is a better balance than a PJ but the neck pickup is still more powerful. So when you've got it in the center, you are picking up a little bit more information from here. It's really kind of cool. Here's another thing that I have seen recently, the Dunnable Narwhal. Very expensive. I don't know the exact price, but they're not cheap. You see, this one actually, instead of having 2 reverse P, has 2 regular P. So all these people are onto something. BC Rich Warlocks back in the 80s had 2 P pickups. And somebody that is using this sort of style that I'm not sure if you are aware of recently is Dingwall. So did you know that the inside of the pickups that they are putting in the NG bases and the combustion bases looks like this? Yes, it is a reverse P setup with neodymium magnets. So they're using 3, sometimes 2, but they're using 3 P style pickups. And this goes back to my first comment, which is if you have a P-bass pickup that you don't really like the sound of, it's probably the wrong style of P pickup for you. I don't really know anybody that hates the sound of a Dingwall. You wouldn't say, oh, my Dingwall sounds like a 60s P-bass. No, but it has that sort of character brought to life with neodymium, right? And run through an active preamp. And of course, if you run 2 of these, if you run the jazz position, right, which is the neck and bridge, it's not going to sound like a jazz bass. So what I'm getting at here is double P. It is not as weak as a jazz bass. I have said a whole lot to bring me to an interesting point. If you cannot afford a Dunnable or an RKM or an FGN, what do? Well, do you have a bass with 2 soap bar pickups? Because a double soap bar bass has potential. You see this? This is an EMG 40P5. I'm surprised this isn't on more people's radar. Okay, so 40P5 looks like this under the cover. It's a reverse P, essentially. And it's, to my knowledge, it's exactly the same wind as their like P-bass pickup. If you don't like active pickups, then you could go, boom, Bartolini. Look, you have original splits, which is reverse P, and P soap bars, which is actual original P setup. These are just not really on a lot of people's radar because I don't think these companies push them. I do notice that the coloring that they use here denotes their type of magnet. So the P versus the original is going to have a different tone, not only because of the split, but also because of the magnet type. I'm not the biggest Bartolini fan, so I couldn't really get too deep into this, but I can tell you that I would much prefer this over 2J squared or quads or classic or original, any of them. Now, I quickly brushed over quads. These are both quad coil. Some manufacturers give you the potential to take a quad coil and split it where you've got 1 red and 1 blue, which is very interesting. You notice that here, this is blue and this is red. This denotes the polarity. So you would split to one side and you would still have a north and a south, and it would be hum canceling. So I'm not sure what's going on here, but this one is meant for you to split like that. Now, if you have a split coil in line like this, I've found that it's not very much different than a P-bass, and I have an actual personal example that I want to tag at the end of the video of me playing one of my basses. So if you have a split coil in line, it's not very much different from a P-bass. However, okay, this one does not show. That's okay. These have 1 coil around here and 1 coil around here. This is one reason why these sound so thick. The other reason these sound so thick, and yeah, you can't see it, is it's double ceramic magnets on the bottom. So this has a little bit of P90 DNA, a little bit of P-bass DNA, squeezed into a jazz bass pickup. This is one interesting way to get that double P sort of vibe into a jazz bass. It's not going to be quite all the way there, but it's going to be pretty dang close. Looking at this made me think of the Relentless. Here you go. Look at this. Coil, magnets on bottom. These use neodymium magnets, and they still have this sort of low wind, but they have a really strong magnet. So, not a bad idea. You see that they are recommending a 500K volume pot. That's pretty imperative here in regards to this, because it's going to sound muffled and dull if you don't fix this. So if you buy a stock jazz bass and you want to get a P-bass vibe out of it, and you use your stock 250K volume pot, and you throw in something like DiMarzio's, it's going to sound not very great. Just throwing that out there. So this is the only brand I know of that can squeeze a lot of power into one of these. And here's the reason I'm going so hard on this point, is that the reason a P-bass has the sound that it does is because the coil is wide. Here, let's look at this. So obviously the width of this coil is wider than this coil. So that's why the P-bass sounds how it sounds. There are people who will solo the neck pickup of a jazz bass and it sounds pretty good, but it's always a little bit weaker. And it's just because the coil's not as wide. That's completely the point. Now, I want to look at Nordstrand because we have a few different things going on here. A big single sounds so good because it is a single coil with those angled pole pieces I was talking about, so that your actual wire coil is wider and it fits under this fat shell of a soap bar, so it's beefy, right? So this gets you one part of the way there, and then a big split here. I thought for sure they would show it being split. This brings you the extra step of the way there, where there's a coil over two and there's a coil over the others. So this is another example of inline split, but the coil is so wide that this is going to sound very P-bass-ish under that cover. As a matter of fact, what does it say? Given the extrapolated personality of its PJ sound, the big split is it says its nature is sort of a hybrid PJ character. It's very much pushing that direction. So, guess what? I just remembered something. Ibanez SR, I don't know, 605. Here we go. Boom. This is the best thing you can do if you want to get that double P sound for under $1,000, is this bass with these pickups. Can you see what they look like? These are essentially like the big splits I was just showing you, but these coils are actually slightly offset, like a P-bass. So yeah, this is going to have a coil here and a coil here, and you've got two. So yeah, man, this is the best bet. If you already have a soap bar bass, then I would recommend you, well, if you like active pickups, go EMG. If you don't, you could go LeCompte here. See this? This is a split. These have triple magnets and are very hot. If you don't like the very hot, then you could go with this, which is more of a vintage sort of vibe. Or you could go with the Bartolini's. Or you could even... go this direction, where you could buy Dingwall pickups, fit under EMG 40 shape or EMG 35, whatever, and put them in your bass. Now, this is a lot to ask for. The direction that I went was talking to somebody who runs a custom shop. So there's a lot of custom pickup builders that are out there that can build whatever you want, and they're small, so you've either never heard of them, or maybe you've barely seen anything from them and you haven't really heard any tone demos or reviews or anything. So I'd like to provide you a demo of some 916 pickups that I got. 916 pickups is out of California. It's a one-man thing, but he can build all sorts of options. I was able to just go back and forth with him on ideas, and he had already been building PJ under this shape of soap bar for BTB Ibanez bases, and they were neodymium, which I thought was really cool, and I just got him to build me double P. The ones that he built me are similarly to the big splits I showed you from Nordstrand. It's one line, so you've got a coil and then another coil, but it sounds very P-ish. So